Hi, and welcome to Noble Character Crafts. My name is Amy, and I am coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Friday, June 25th, 2021. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you really enjoy this episode. You can find me online on Instagram and Etsy at Noble Character Crafts, and you can also get in contact with me through my email at noblecharactercrafts@yahoo.com. I will have links to the places that you can find me in the description box below, as well as the show notes for this episode. This is a channel all about my crafty life, and today I have knitting, crocheting, and cross stitch to share with you all. I am currently hosting a year-long make-along on Instagram called the Make 9 2021 Mal, and that is for you to join in the Make 9 challenge. I will have details about this make-along in the description box below if you are unfamiliar with it, and if you would still like to join in, please don't hesitate to do so. I would love to have you join in. It's a year-long make-along and you're not required to finish anything, so it's never too late to join in. You can join in at any time. I have a few finished objects to share with you all today, which I'm so excited about. The first of which is a pair of socks that I was able to finish. I'm so happy with how these turned out. These are the DunBroch pattern by Kay Jones of Bakery Bears. And these are the 6th item that I have been able to finish from my Make 9 2021 board. So I'm super excited about that. I really enjoyed this pattern. The lovely twisted stitches make this cable-like pattern along the edge here, and that pattern is mirrored on each sock. So this is the right sock, and this is the left sock. And then on the inside of both, it just has this beautiful, and all around the back and everything, it has this beautiful broken rib pattern. I absolutely love how these turned out. The yarn that I used is Knit Picks Stroll Tweed in the Sequoia Heather colorway, which I have mentioned before that the patterning is a little bit more difficult to see with this dark tweedy yarn, but I still love how they turned out, and I am so happy with them. I made the medium size, which was a 64 stitch count. They are knit from the cuff down. I used US 1 2.25 millimeter needles, and I did shorten the cuff by a few rows because the original pattern intends for you to roll over the cuff, and I did not want to do that. So I just did 20 rounds for the cuffs. And then I knit these 2 at a time, and that went really well. It has a slip stitch heel flap and a square heel, which I mentioned last time is probably not my favorite heel, just because I had a hard time with the SSK stitches being a little too sloppy and loose. I know that Kay mentioned in the Bakery Bears last episode that she was going to be coming out with a tutorial on a different way to do the SSK stitch to tighten that up, but it's only available to their Patreons, which I am not a Patreon of theirs. I should probably look into that though, because I do really enjoy their podcast. So maybe I will look into that, because I would love to see what advice she has on tightening up that SSK stitch. Anyway, I knit them to pattern except for the shortening of the cuff, and then for the last year or so, have always been adding a slip stitch detail to the ball of my foot to hopefully prevent me getting holes in that part of my socks as quickly as I normally do. So I again added that in. You can see right here I started this slip stitch detail, and then I just continue that until the toe. The toe is her umbrella toe, which I have done before. One of my children is knocking on something. They're not locked out. Okay. One of my boys wanted in our basement door, which was locked. But anyway, where was I? Oh, the umbrella toe. Now I'm trying to think if I have done that. I'm pretty sure I have. on a pair of shorty socks. Ooh, they're just out of my reach. I have not done the umbrella toe, but I did use her umbrella heel, which I believe is basically the same pattern, just put into an afterthought heel. I put that into these socks. So anyway, I really like that toe. That's kind of a fun construction of a toe. So these fit really well, and I'm super happy with them. My next finished object is my 7th finished item off of my Make 9 2021 board. So I only have 2 projects left, but I haven't even started either one of those. The 2 projects I have left are a pretty intricate cardigan that I'm planning to add beads to, and it's knit in fingering weight yarn. And then the other item is a pair of colorwork mittens that have like finger openings, but then they have a flip top for the mitten part. So those will be a little bit more intricate as well, because I've never done finger openings. I've made lots of colorwork mittens before, but I've never done any type of glove. And so this one is kind of like that because it has the finger opening parts on it. Anyway, this beautiful item I'm so excited about is my shawl that I made using the Miley Hexagon motif by Emma of Potter and Bloom. I started this project, now I can't remember again. I think I mentioned it last time when I started it, but now I can't remember again. Let me see if I can find it. I started it several years ago. Well, 2 years ago. I started it in January of 2019, and I was intending to make it into a blanket, but I decided that I would really like to have it as a shawl instead. So I used the Kimba shawl that I finished earlier this year by Amba O'Brien. I used the shape of that shawl to kind of help me figure out the layout of this shawl. I'm like upside down now, I think. Here we go. So I laid out the Kimba shawl and then just kept adding hexagons onto the edges of this piece to kind of mimic the shape of the Kimba shawl. So it has a nice kind of a crescent shape to it with these edges that taper out. Emma's original pattern, which is a free pattern on her blog, calls for you to use fingering weight yarn, but I used DK weight yarn. I used a bunch of scraps for the first round of this pattern of DK weight yarn, and then for the second and third rounds of this pattern, I used just a bare undyed yarn. That is a 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon base. I used an H5mm hook, and I joined the hexies together as I crocheted along. And it worked out really well. I'm so happy with it. So it works super well to wear it over the shoulders like this. I'll stand up so you can kind of see how long it is. I'm going to have to be standing up and down a lot this episode because I have a few bigger pieces to show you all. But anyway, I really like how it lays, like how long it comes in the front here when it's worn this way. I think it's so pretty. I just love how it fits and how it looks. And then I think it works really well to, you can kind of put one side shorter like this and just drape the longer end over the shoulder. I may need to look into getting a type of shawl pin. I don't have a shawl pin, but it would work really well to have a shawl pin right here on my shoulder to hold that, because since it is DK weight yarn and since it's crocheted, the fabric of it is a bit heavier and thicker. I just love it though. It's so cozy. I really think I'm going to like it once the weather cools off again. So I think it's really, really fun. I could wear it kind of wrapping this all the way around too if I really wanted it to be a cozy, warm type of shawl. Oh yeah, that's nice too. I can just imagine in the winter cozying up with this. That would be so nice. I just really love it. I'm so excited about having this as a, you know, a crocheted, I love crocheted hexagons, and I just think it's so fun to have it in the form of a shawl. So I'm super happy with how this turned out. I wonder if I can give you a better idea of how it looks holding it up now that I'm standing up here. There we go. I think it's really cool. I'm so happy with it. I was careful with how I placed the hexagons as well. I don't know if anybody else will notice, but I rotated the orientation of the hexagons so that they kind of, here, I'll see if I can point it out. This row right here, this row right here has all of the motifs with one of the three center pieces pointing up and two are pointing down, and then the next row is flipped, so there's two on the top and one on the bottom, and it's like that for every other row, and it kind of goes at a diagonal. Again, I'm probably the only one that's ever going to pay attention to that, but that was just a detail that I enjoyed including, I guess. So anyway, I love this one as well. I'm so happy with how it turned out and so excited to have another item off of my Make 9 2021 board completed. So exciting. I'm doing so much better with my Make 9 board this year than I did last year, although I can't remember. I know I did not finish my Make 9 2020 board, but I can't quite remember how many. I know I at least didn't finish 2. I can't quite remember. I'd have to go back and look, but anyway, I think I might be able to finish this year since it's only June and I only have 2 projects left. But like I said, they're both pretty detailed projects, but I still have plenty of time, so we'll see. But of course, again, just to reiterate, no pressure with the Make 9 2021 Mal. You do not need to finish everything on your board. It's just for fun, so just remember that. Don't stress about it. I have one more finished object that I'm super excited about, and that is this striped cardigan that I have been knitting using up some of my Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn. So I mentioned 2 episodes ago that I had started a new scrappy blanket using up my Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn, and I had quite a bit of it in these 6 colors. I had enough of these 6 colors that I thought I would be able to make a sweater or a cardigan striping these 6 colors together and still have plenty of these colors to add into the scrappy blanket and make the scrappy blanket large enough. So I'm so excited that I was able to make this sweater. I love how these colors striped up together. I think it's just fun that, you know, there's not a lot of contrast. They're all pretty dark colors, but I just think it looks really cool with these colors together. So as I've mentioned before, I very loosely followed a pattern for this cardigan. I used the numbers from the Gigi cardigan by Devin Ventry of Knitty McPurly to start this garment, and I should mention what size I started with. I started with her medium size, and then I followed her instructions for the raglan increases, but then that's the extent of where I followed her pattern basically. I did not increase to the total number of stitches that she called for in her pattern. I just tried it on until it was the right fit that I wanted. I also knit this in the round, which is different from the pattern. And that's the only, I changed so much from the pattern. So it's basically just the cast on number of stitches. Anyway, then I knit it in the round, all in stockinette. I added 6 extra stitches to the center so that I could cut it open to make it into a cardigan. So I steeked it. I knit it I would say probably an average length, I guess. I'll try it on in a minute so you can see where it fits me, but it hits on my, you know, lower hip, I guess. It's kind of a longer cardigan. I knit the sleeves just straight. I did not do any decreases until I got to the cuff. Then I did a knit 2 together, knit 1, and then I repeated that pattern to decrease for the cuffs. All of the ribbing is 2x2 ribbing. On the cuffs and the bottom ribbing, I did a stretchy bind off using a tutorial by Very Pink Knits, which I'll link to in the description box below. But then for the button band and the neck band, I did a tubular bind off, which I don't know why I changed my mind on that, but well, I do know the reason. I guess the reason why I thought of it was because for the, well, let's see, let me back up. Last time I recorded, I was done with one sleeve and on the second sleeve, I believe, pretty sure. And so I finished the second sleeve, and then I actually recorded a tutorial for how I reinforce my stitches using my sewing machine and pick up stitches for the button bands. So that should already be on my channel. I have not uploaded it at this time when I'm recording this video, but I should upload that video before I upload this video. So that should be up on my channel if you're interested to see how I reinforced the stitches using my sewing machine. So I just sewed a straight line up either side of the steek stitches, cut it open, and then picked up the button bands. For the button bands, I knit the same amount of rows or rounds that I did for all the other cuffs, which was a total of 16 rows. And for the buttonholes, I followed the instructions from the Wyatt sweater by Michelle Wong, which I have knit several times for my children. And I really love the button. It's a 1-row buttonhole instruction that she has. And in that original pattern, I believe that it calls for you to make a 4-stitch buttonhole opening, but I only did a 2-stitch buttonhole opening. Anyway, so since I was using that pattern for the buttonhole instructions, that pattern, the Wyatt pattern, also calls for a tubular bind off. I guess that's what reminded me to follow her instructions for the tubular bind off. So that's why I did that, I guess, for the button bands and the neck band. So I did the button bands first, and then after the button bands were done, I picked up the neck band, and I needed to add a buttonhole to the neck band as well. So that's up here. And I just tried to line it up as best I could with the other button bands and space it out as evenly as possible so that it was all even, as even as possible. The colors that I used for this are, the main color here that's on all the ribbing is Merlot Heather. Knit Picks Wool of the Andes is 100% non-superwash Peruvian Highland wool, by the way. Then I have this black color called Coal, Lava Heather, Onyx Heather, Currant, and Bittersweet Heather. And I had these buttons, these wooden buttons in my stash that are just this really deep chocolate brown color, which I thought worked so well with the colors in this cardigan. So I'll go ahead and put it on and stand up so you can see it better. Here it is. I'm really, really happy with the fit. It did turn out a little bit more fitted in the body than I had expected. I was expecting it to be a little bit more oversized just when I was kind of envisioning it in my head. It is more fitted, but it still is really comfortable, and I like the fit of it, so I'm happy with it. Let's see, some of these buttonholes are kind of hard to find. I need to kind of look for them. I think the more I use it, the easier it will be to find those buttonholes. I probably won't ever button it up all the way, but maybe, I don't know, if I'm cold. I guess I could. Anyway, I really think the stripes and the colors in this are so fun. I just love it. I think it's going to go with a ton of stuff, and I'm happy with it. So here is all buttoned up. The sleeves turned out a little bit longer than what I expected as well. After blocking, I think they grew a little bit, but I like them. This is just really kind of a relaxed fit on the sleeves especially, and I think it's just so cozy. They're still fitted. I mean, the ribbings, I can roll up the sleeves if I need to, so that's good. Oh, it's so nice though. I mean, it's way too warm right now to enjoy it, but I think come winter or fall and winter, I'm gonna love wearing this sweater so much. So there it is. Yeah, I probably won't wear it all buttoned up, but I'm so happy with it. Oh, I should show you the inside where I steeked it open. Come closer. Here you can see the raw edge of where I steeked it open. And since I steeked it, I also changed the colors. When I was switching colors for these stripes, I changed on the steek panel so that then I didn't have to weave any of those ends in on the main body of the sweater. I did have to weave in the ends on the sleeves, but that was fine. Oh, I love it so much. I love these deep, rich colors. They're my favorite. I think it's so fun. And it was so nice to just be able to use up so much of my stash, you know. It's great. And I love this Merlot Heather color so much. I'm so excited to have that as the main color for this sweater. Love it. Okay, but it's way too hot. All right, so those are my finished objects for this episode. Very, very happy with those. And since I finished 3 objects, I have 3 new projects as well. But I have a total of 6 whips that I will get into next. My first one is being held in this beautiful project bag that I received from Mary Ann of Rock Islander in a swap that we did several years ago. And in here, oh, I took this to a dentist appointment and I have the free toothbrush in there. And I also have the Black Frost shawl in here, which is a beautiful pattern by Melanie Rice. This is from my Make 9 2021 gift list. I have made 2 boards, one for my personal projects and one for projects that I want to make as gifts. I haven't worked on this a ton, but a little bit. And it is growing, of course, as is typical for shawls. It's knit from the top down, so it's getting bigger every row. And I am into the lace section, so that's super exciting. So here is a beautiful progress keeper from Million Dots that is marking where I was last time I recorded an episode. And I've done several inches there, and you can see the beautiful lace pattern is starting to form. So that's super exciting. It's looking really, really nice, I think. The yarn that I'm using for this project is Loops and Threads Impeccable yarn in the classic gray color, and it is 100% acrylic yarn, worsted weight. So that will make a really good gift, I think. I don't know who this is going to go to. I'm just going to keep this in my gift basket kind of a thing, so that I can give this to somebody down the road whenever it is appropriate. I really am enjoying working on this. The lace is really, really fun to work on this pattern. The needles that I'm using are for the knit side rows. I am using a US 8 5mm needle, which is the recommended needle size for the pattern. But then for the purl side rows, since my purl stitches are looser than my knit stitches, I've gone down to a 7 4.5mm needle to try to get a more even gauge. Thank you to everybody who's commented on different blogs, different YouTube tutorials for helping me to tighten up my purl stitches. I have a few different techniques that I still want to try to tighten up my purl stitches even more, but I really appreciate any any tips you guys have shared with me. I really appreciate that. So thank you if you have been one of those that have given me any tips for tightening up my purl stitches. But anyway, I'm really enjoying this project. It's really fun. I don't always love lace work, but I'm really loving this one. The lace, I guess, just isn't too difficult. I've put in stitch markers for every lace repeat, which helps so much. So it really, helps me just to stay on track and make sure I've got my stitch count right and I haven't missed a yarn over or something like that. It's easy for me to double check. There's 12 stitches in between each stitch marker, so it's really easy just to double check my stitch count and make sure that I'm doing it right. And so it's been enjoyable to work on. My next work in progress is being held in this Me Made project bag. I followed a tutorial by Erica Art in order to make this bag, and so I will link to that tutorial in the description box below. If you would like to try out her tutorials, I highly recommend them. She does awesome tutorials on sewing. And in here is my cross stitch project. I am working on this beautiful pattern by Dimensions. It's called Be a Light. And I am stitching this along with Erica of the Rose Opal Knits podcast. She's also working on this project, so that's super fun. And I will insert a picture of my progress from the last time that I recorded an episode so that you can compare it to how I am coming along. So again, I've been working on this pretty much every morning. I did miss one morning. I don't remember what we had going on, but who knows? There was one morning when I didn't get to it, but every other morning I've worked on it by just cutting one length of this thread that is included with the kit and using up that entire length of thread, working it into the project. So it takes me about a half an hour to do that. I just really love how it's coming out. I think it's so pretty. I still have a lot to do on it though. There's 3 jars like this, and then there's tons of work that still goes into the background. A lot of those are only half stitches though, so I don't remember ever I haven't done a ton of cross stitch. I've only done a handful of projects in my entire life, and I haven't worked on any cross stitch in many years. But I don't recall ever doing any projects where there was only a half stitch. But anyway, I suppose that will go twice as fast because you're only doing half of the stitch. So anyway, a lot of the background stitches are those half stitches. But I think it's coming along so well. I'm excited to finish up the candle on these. I think that'll really add a lot to it. I love the white in it. It just, it's just so realistic then. It has that glare of the light on the, it makes it look like a glare on the light of the jars. It just makes it look so much more dimensional, I guess. I think it's so pretty. I love cross stitch. I really enjoy doing it. I just have a hard time finding cross stitch patterns that I really love, that I love enough to want to put up in my home, I guess. I don't know. It's just hard to find a style that I'm like, yeah, I really want that on my wall. I don't know. But I have found a few. But like I said before, that I'm not going to get another kit or cross stitch pattern until I finish this one, because I have a feeling that I won't stick with it, because it's it's not knitting and crochet, so it's not my most favorite craft, but I am really enjoying it. The next project I have to share with you, I shared 2 episodes ago. It was the scrappy blanket that I mentioned, using up my Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn, and I am loving it so much, and you'll be able to tell because it's grown a lot. Here it is. So it's grown so much since I showed it off last time, well, 2 episodes ago, but I hadn't worked on it until I picked it back up when I was just finishing up the ribbing and everything on that striped cardigan, because I really wanted to see how much leftovers I would have from that cardigan to add to this blanket. Oh, I love it so much. To be honest, I keep looking at it and thinking, is this hideous? But my kids are all reassuring me that they love it. So, but this is really, I never really know if I'm a product knitter or a process knitter, you know, whether I enjoy the process of knitting more than the product. I think I'm usually more of a product knitter because I really, really want that finished item. And I'm motivated to finish my projects. I don't have a lot of languishing works in progress. Besides, I have a lot of scrappy blankets, but they're just really long-term projects usually. But for this project, even though it's probably not the most beautiful blanket in the world, you know, the color, some of the color combinations are a little weird, but I absolutely love the process of making this blanket. It is so enjoyable to me. I love seeing the different color combinations. A lot of them are just so unique. I just wouldn't put some of these colors together, and when I see them crocheted together, it's just like, oh, I love that combination. Even these colors right here, I would never put those together, but the colors of them are just, it's kind of a 70s look, but it's really a nice, rich color combination, I think, with the gold and the burnt orange with the black and the ivory. I just think it's a cool combination. And I'm loving the border, or the outside colors that I'm working with now, with these greens and purples and pinks and orange even together. I just think it looks so, so pretty together. So the fun of this project is that you're working 4 colors at all times. This is the Spiral Illusion Square pattern, which is a free pattern on the Crochet Instinct blog, and that is run by Stephanie. And so the original pattern is just a square. I'm not sure how big, but it looks like it's about maybe 12 inches, this original square. And I'm just following that pattern, but just making it a huge square. I did make a modification to the pattern starting on row 5. Instead of doing, for the clusters, her original pattern has you only doing 2 double crochet stitches for each cluster, and I am doing 3 double crochet stitches for each cluster. And then she has you chain 1 in between each cluster, and I'm not doing that since I'm adding the extra double crochet stitch to the cluster. And I just made that decision because I am so used to this stitch, the, you know, regular granny square 3 double crochet stitch cluster stitch, that it was just so much easier to do this for me. And I like how, you know, it gives more of it's not as open of a stitch this way. So I really like that for a blanket. But as you can see, you start in the center, and last time I shared this, I had only done the first 4 colors to make up this spiral, the start of the spiral, and then I was right here where this blue color ended. That's where I last showed it off to you. Here's a cute little progress keeper that my cousin Allie made for me of this cactus. Isn't that sweet? I love it so much. So that's kind of showing where I was when I last showed this off. So when I change colors, I'm using the Russian join method to change colors. And the way that I am laying out the colors is I weighed all of my Knit Pixel of the Andes yarn, and I am using the colors that I have the least of first, and then I'm just working up to the colors that I have the most of. So you know, it's really a random pick of what colors are put together, but I really love the interest that brings. It's just so exciting to finish a color and then join in a new color and see how that color combination works with the other 3 colors. Because as I said, you always have 4 balls of yarn attached to your project at one time. And since you're working in a spiral, you're just working around and around. And so when you start a new color, I don't know, it's just so cool because, you know, the stripes are spread out. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just so cool. I just really love it. I've never made a blanket in a spiral fashion like this before, and I think it's super cool. Now, the entire blanket does have kind of a little bit of a, you know, it's not perfectly square. It kind of has, a granny square kind of has that tendency to kind of have a a tilt to it anyway if you don't switch working from the right side to the wrong side, which I typically do. When I typically make a granny square, I typically flip my work, turn my work every round so that it's more even. But with this, you're always working on the right side. And it has that spiral to it anyway, so it kind of does have a bit of a spiral to the shape of it. It's not perfectly square, I don't think. But this is going to be pretty large, and so I don't think it's going to really matter when it's all done that it has, it's not perfectly square. It's just so much fun to work on. I love it so much. I am using an H hook, 5mm crochet hook for this project as well. Oh, I don't know. I just am so excited about this project. I just can't put it down, obviously. It's just grown. It's grown quite a bit. And I'm on my last, well, after the colors that I have right now are all but 2 colors. So I have, no, I'm sorry, 3 more colors I have to add into this blanket. But of course I have the most of those 3 colors, and they're actually colors that are left over from this sweater. So I still have Lava Heather, the Merlot Heather, and Bittersweet Heather to work into this blanket. But otherwise I have all of the colors from my stash in this project so far. So there it is. So much fun to work on. I just love it so much. And you would think that I would not be able to work on this worsted weight 100% wool blanket in the summer. I mean, we're at the height of the warm months now, but it hasn't bothered me because we have air conditioning in our home and I usually have a fan on me. I haven't been hot working under this yet. In fact, it's just now getting to the point where I can cover up my feet, which is so nice because my feet are oftentimes cold. Anyway, I love it so much. I highly recommend this pattern if you would like to give it a try. It's super fun. My next 3 projects are my new works in progress that I've cast on. My first one is being held in this Japanese knot bag that my friend Tina gave to me. And I saw a post from Anna of Anna Knitter where she was showing a bunch of Christmas colored yarn on her post, and she mentioned a knit along for Christmas in July, basically. I'll try to put the hashtag down below for what the exact make along or knit along, I'm not sure if it's a knit along or a make along is, but it's hosted by Dana Ray, and the point is to work on Christmas projects. And last Christmas, Anna and I did a swap, and she sent me some wool, this is called Wool Boot, and it's a Christmas yarn. She sent me 3 skeins of it. I worked up one of those 3 skeins already. I wonder if those socks are handy. Oh, here they are. Here's the first pair of socks that I already made using up 1 skein of that Wool Boot yarn. And I just did these in plain stockinette. And now I'm working up this skein. Oh, the color for this one is 6642. It is a fingering weight yarn, 73% wool, 24% polyamide, and 3% polyester. And the skeins are 100 grams. You cannot get this in America, so that's how I was able to get it, because I did a swap with Anna who lives in Germany. It's a German yarn. Anyway, here is the colorway I'm working up now. And I decided to, since the lady that was hosting this knit along had some sock patterns, I went and checked out her shop and found this pattern that actually has 3 patterns in one for textured socks 3 ways, and the designer is Dana Ray. And the one that I am doing is, the pattern that I'm following is this first one, which is called the Stacked Circles pattern stitch. I'm knitting them 2 at a time, and I again cast on 64 stitches. I am using US 0.2 mm needles. I started these trying to do a new method of knitting socks using 2 circular needles. So I had 2 24-inch circular needles, and I was following the tutorial by Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady for her summer sock camp, but I was not doing well. I kept getting my needles so mixed up. Ugh. So I had only knit the ribbing, and I had already gotten my needles. Oh my goodness, it was so crazy. I don't know how I did it. I was trying to be careful to grab the right needle to knit from the correct needle, but I kept getting mixed up. And one time I had my first sock completely turned around. I don't know. I have no idea what I did wrong. I have no idea how I did it. I was so confused. Anyway, I had worked through the ribbing. I had messed up 2 times already. And I thought, come on, I can do this. This is not going to beat me. So I was on my first row of the pattern, and I got all mixed up again. And I was like, forget it. This is not enjoyable at all. I might come back to it again someday, but I am just not enjoying this process at all. It's so frustrating when I kept getting mixed up with my needles. So I just switched to my regular knitting of, I think these are on a 40-inch cable doing magic loop. So anyway, it's so much easier for me to do it this way. Anyway, the cuffs are 2x2 ribbing, knit purl 2, purl, knit 2, purl 2 for 20 rounds. And then I've just done, I think I've done about 1.5 repeats of the pattern, which you can't see, can you? I can't see it very well, but that's okay. Like I've mentioned before, I really just like pattern socks a lot, and so it's basically just a ribbed pattern, but it's kind of, you know, not an even rib, it's stacked. As the pattern says, it's stacked circles. Anyway, it's an 8-row repeat, and so I'm using this really nice row counter Progress Keeper by Twill and Print, and they're going really well. I love this yarn so much. It's so sparkly. It's just got that really bold gold thread throughout the entirety of the yarn. Maybe I can show it. It's not like stellina. It's just like it's got a gold thread twisted around the entirety of the yarn. So it's super duper sparkly. Love it. My next new work in progress is being held in one of my own project bags. I kept one for myself, or I should say I made one for myself. From my last update, I made sure that I set aside one of this print because it's my favorite. So this is in my smallest sized project bag, which works really nicely for a pair of socks. And that's what is being started in this project bag. But I need to start over. But I'll show you what I've done so far. So I was watching Emma of Potter and Bloom's last episode, and she shared a pair of spiral socks that she was working on for her daughter. Oh, I don't have the pattern because I didn't print it out because I couldn't quite figure out how to print it out from the website. But, oh, I bet I wrote it down in my handy dandy notebook, which I keep track of all of the projects that I knit on. Here is the information from this project. These are the spiral socks by Les Mos. Ooh, this looks like French. Pardon me while I try to do this. La Maison really. Oh my, I'm sorry. I'm sure I didn't say that right, but I will put it down below. Anyway, this pattern is free. It's knit from the toe up, which is not my standard. I think I've only done 2 pairs of socks toe up. And she gives you a couple different choices for toe, ways to make the toe. The one that I have started is the star toe. But I am going to rip this out and try the other toe, which I think is called a flat toe maybe. This one started with a pinhole cast on, which I'd never done before. It was quite difficult for me to do. I had to try it over and over again before I finally got it. She does link to a tutorial in her pattern, but I was just really having a hard time with it. And then I don't know, the increases are just really, I'm having a hard time getting those to be tight, and I just don't like how that's looking with those big holes. I have another huge hole right here and a really loose stitch back here. So I'm going to start this over and do the flat toe instead. I'm planning on knitting these 2 at a time as well once I get the toes done, but starting toes is pretty hard for me since I'm not used to it. I've not done it very much. And so I'm probably going to knit the 2 toes separately and then join together to make them, you know, put them on magic loop again and knit them 2 at a time. This yarn is my own hand-dyed yarn on 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon fingering weight base, and this is in the colorway Gaze. I used to hand dye yarn and sell it. I do not anymore, but that was one of the colorways that I used to sell. And that's just a contrast color for the main color, which is going to be Knit Picks Felici in the Goth Kitty colorway. Did I mention that I'm knitting these for my daughter? I don't think I did, but I am. So the point of the Spiral Socks pattern is so that there's no heel in this sock pattern, and that way it grows with the child. I've made 4 pairs of socks for my daughter. I've knit her 4 pairs of socks, and she can't fit into any of them anymore because she's outgrown them. So I think it would be really nice to get her a new pair of socks that she won't outgrow. Well, eventually she probably will, but she'll be able to wear them for several years, hopefully. The Knit Picks Felici is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon as well. And this is a discontinued colorway. Knit Picks Felici usually doesn't repeat their colorways, but that's an old one. I've had it in my stash for several years. And the needles I'm using for this project, well, I'm just using DPNs right now. US 1 2.25 millimeter needles. All of my needles are ChowGoo needles. So I'm not sure where this, I believe I got this DPN holder in a swap, so I'm not sure who made that. But it's got cute kitties on it. All right. And my last work in progress is another scrappy blanket that I'm super excited about as well. Scrappy blankets are probably my favorite. Blankets in general. I love making blankets. This is in a scrappy project bag that I made myself. And I have started the Jelly Roll blanket by Kay Jones of Bakery Bears, and I'm so excited about it. I have decided to use the rest of my leftovers. So like I mentioned in the shawl that I crocheted, I used a bunch of my DK weight scraps. I still have not a ton. They're in this bag. So it's not even filling up this bag. Not a ton. I don't think you can kind of see. But, you know, a good amount of DK weight scraps. It's not going to be enough to finish this blanket anytime soon. So this is definitely going to be a long-term project as I continue to knit things in DK weight and have leftovers. I'll just add them to this project. I also did add in a little bit of my own hand-dyed worsted weight yarn because I just felt like it's a little bit thinner than the Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight. And I thought it would work, and I think it did. You can tell maybe it's a little bit thicker, but it was just this little tiny piece, and I thought, that'll go, that'll work. Anyway, Kay's pattern is really, you know, simple and beautifully written, and the idea is that it mimics a Jelly Roll quilt pattern, where you use 2.5-inch strips to piece together a quilt. So you knit this project in strips. So here is my first strip. I am actually going to be orientating this blanket horizontally instead of the original pattern shows the strips running vertically, but I want my strips to run horizontally. So this is the width of my blanket, which I just compared to one of my other blankets that we use that I like the width of. So it's not very narrow, but it's a good size for 2 people to use comfortably. And instead of doing the original, since I'm using a thicker yarn, I cast on 16 stitches for my strips, which is just a little bit less than what the original pattern calls for. As you can see, it's all done in garter stitch, which makes it just a super simple pattern. I am again using the Russian join method when I change colors. At first I was going to try to be more careful with only joining a new color on the right side so that my purl bumps wouldn't show through when I was, changing colors. But then I decided that that was too finicky, and I like scrappy blankets to be very mindless, so I'm not worrying about when I switch colors. And I believe that Kay, in her pattern, she recommends changing color midway through a row anyway, so anyway. I've just started adding in my second strip, and she includes a tutorial to show you how to do the joining method here, which I thought was going to be difficult, but it's not at all. It's very simple and super enjoyable to add in a new strip of yarn. So that's coming along really nicely. It's so mindless. Oh, the needles I'm using for this project are, I'm using US 4 3.5 millimeter needles for this project. It's so enjoyable. I'm loving it so much. Another great mindless project for a scrappy blanket, which is just my favorite. And this right now is a really good project to travel with also, because it's not huge yet. Of course it will grow, but I do have my leftovers from my precious hand spun yarn that I got from Slothy Creations. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be using them in this project yet. I just can't decide if I want to have them, this one's a mess, have them in this project or if I want to save them for a different project. They're so beautiful. I've used these in a vest, a colorwork vest that I recently made, well, a couple months ago probably, and then I put a few bits of this into the crocheted shawl that I just showed off as well. So I still have this, it's about 100 grams altogether with these two combined. So I'm not sure if I want to use them together in a project, or they might be beautiful in a colorwork yoke of a sweater. I just can't decide, but I would also love to have them in this blanket. So maybe I'll just use a little bit of them. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but I have them in here. Unsure if I will use them or not. But those are all of the projects that I have to share with you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I would appreciate that so much. I hope you all are doing well. Thanks again for joining me. Bye-bye.